What's up, Sports Wars? It's Jeremy coming to you with another video, and today we are going to talk about the big-time fight between Jake Paul. I always get them confused because they're one and the same to me. So, Tyron Woodley versus Jake Paul, and I am joined by T-Rev. Now, T-Rev has been on a few Geeks and Gamers streams in the past. He's also developing the Geeks and Gamers video game, and he is a big-time boxing MMA guy. We're going to be covering more boxing and MMA here on this channel. Definitely something we want to get more involved in. I have a lot of respect for Dana White and what he's doing at UFC, and we really want to cover more of that. T-Rev brings a lot of knowledge to the table. So how are you doing, T-Rev?
I'm doing great, man. I'm excited to be here. I'm a huge fan of Sports Wars, huge fan of the Geeks and Gamers brand, hence why I made a video game about it. And I'm a huge fan of combat sports as well.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. And it's something we need to cover more on this channel. So I'm glad you're going to help us bring that dynamic into the fold. So we're talking about the Jake Paul fight because that's what everybody talks about every time a Paul brother gets involved. So what are your initial thoughts as a true fight fan, as a true combat sports fight fan? How do you feel about Jake Paul and Logan Paul in general, about how they're getting involved with this world? Do you take them seriously? Do you think it's a sideshow? What are your kind of quick thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely take them seriously, especially after Jake Paul's last fight against Ben Askren. Going in there, he was fighting an Olympic-level athlete, though Ben Askren was indeed a wrestler. Before that, I thought maybe this is a sideshow, but nowadays, like, that kind of turned everyone's head, and now everyone is taking these guys seriously.
Yeah, I mean, I have nothing against Jake Paul, Logan Paul. I don't like these guys in terms of their YouTube personalities, but I've always respected the grind. And I do think that they're bringing a certain kind of professional wrestling gimmick to the advertising of their fights. But it's clear that Jake Paul is someone to take seriously in the ring. I'm not sure about Logan, really, but Jake Paul has proven himself to be very formidable in terms of all of this. And he does a great job of hyping the fights up. People want to watch. People are watching because mostly they want to see him get beat, but also because he makes things, yes, exactly. But he makes things interesting, and that's the key to it all. So today I noticed this big thing happened at the press conference today, and I actually heard about it earlier. I'm going to play the clip of what actually happened. So this is some controversy that happened at the press conference. So this is do you know about this? Are you aware of what went down? So, so kind of paint the picture for us.
So right after the press conference ended, Woodley noticed that some members of Jake Paul's team were kind of shouting back and forth with Tyron Woodley's mom, Mama Woodley. Now, you know, Tyron himself is a controversial figure. However, what I have observed is that everyone loves Mama Woodley. She's so sweet. She is. There's videos of her hugging his opponents after his previous fights. So some members of Jake Paul's team were yelling at her, going back and forth. Tyron saw that, and he said, "Nobody messes with my mom," and he was in there instantly. And he was saying, "Yo, I'd be willing to lose out on the payday, lose out on the fight right now to beat this guy up that's yelling at my mom."
So this is legit. So this legitimately went down, and so we're gonna play this clip right now. So this is Mama Woodley, correct?
That looks a lot more like his sister. His mother is, yeah, somewhere off to the side there.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think it had already happened at that point, and so his sister came in yelling at the guy first, and then Tyron comes in. And one thing that I really want to point out here, there's a video of Jake right after this just talking about how, yeah, everybody's in the wrong. They shouldn't have done it. They shouldn't have done it either. But I just hate the whole situation. But if you watch the video that just came out from MMA Fighting, right at the start of it, Woodley's yelling. I was like, "Hey, are you talking to my mom?" And Jake Paul's like, "Yeah, he's talking to your mom. Go do something about it, bitch. Go do something about it." And it's like, what do you mean, Two-Face? What do you mean you don't like it? You were promoting it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think Jake Paul brings that element of just like if you remember back in the day with Tyson and all the stuff he would say, and this is like after he was after he had taken a couple of losses, and he would just say the craziest stuff, eating their children and all that. Like he would say anything and do anything. And I think that's what Jake Paul, I think is I think he's a complete douchebag. I don't think he's a good guy. But I also think that he's willing to do whatever he needs to do to sell whatever he is doing, whether that's YouTube, whether that's a music video. I know his brother's the one that had the whole situation with the forest and recording, but like that's who those guys are. Those guys just will do anything, and then they'll try to act like they're the good guy. Very hypocritical of them. So, but I'm glad that at least you've established that you do take him seriously. You had your concerns, probably when he first started getting involved, and much like his brother, like, oh God, the Paul brothers, but they've proven that they actually do have some decent talent and they're bringing something to the table. So as for the fight itself, this is where you're going to kind of show your knowledge and all the information. So what are you thinking about this fight right now? If you look at all of the odds and everything like that, who's favored, and then break it down as to who you think is going to win or what your predictions are.
Okay, so I'd like to start by taking a look back at Jake Paul's previous fight. So some brief history. Jake Paul knocked out Tyron Woodley's longtime training partner and friend in his previous fight. Woodley and Ben Askren are very close. And then shortly after that, Woodley went on some MMA podcast. It might have been Ariel Helwani's show, where he was saying, I should be Jake Paul's next opponent. Now, when I first heard that, I thought there's no way Jake Paul's going to accept that fight. Woodley is so much bigger than Paul's previous opponents. He has that legitimate knockout power. He's got 12 years of MMA experience. And so I was shocked, honestly, when this fight was announced. I thought, my goodness, he's actually taken the fight. That's insane. But
Interesting.
and not just that. That's just my take. Being more of an MMA fan here.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, Jake Paul is the favorite, minus 190 last I checked. And now I've seen a lot of predictions on this fight, and I'd say overall it's about 60-40 in favor of Jake Paul.
Okay.
Now, and I want to address a lot of the factors here that people are pointing to for why they think Jake Paul's going to win this. First of all, straight up boxing experience versus Tyron Woodley's MMA experience. Jake Paul has been just straight up boxing for 3 years, and he's got all the money in the world, so he can afford some of the best training partners. He's been in Puerto Rico for the past 3 months training with BJ Flores, a very decorated boxer. So you compare that versus Tyron Woodley, who comes from a wrestling background, fought MMA for 12 years. And now when you're training in MMA, yes, you are punching, but the stance is very different. It's not that he's not used to that sideways boxing stance with the shoulder rolling and, showing your side to the opponent. He's more used to the Muay Thai open-handed stance, so you can initiate takedowns, block kicks from the side. In boxing, you don't got to worry about any of that. It's very different.
That's good. That's interesting information for someone like me that's coming at it from a very casual perspective. So that's a really interesting perspective that you're bringing.
Another big point that people are pointing to here is size. Jake Paul, 6'1", walks around, they say, like around 210. He's going to have to cut weight to get down to 190, and they're saying Tyron Woodley is naturally at 190. So they say Jake Paul is significantly bigger. But there's something that I want to share here. Okay, so a lot of people are saying, oh, Jake Paul is significantly bigger, 4 inches taller, maybe 20 pounds heavier. But this is them side by side. This is what they're going to actually look like in that ring. And I mean, you tell me, does it look like Jake Paul is significantly bigger? And two things here. One, this does not do Tyron Woodley justice. He has an insanely wide back, and he has tree trunks for legs, okay? And yes, that is important because in MMA, in boxing as well, the power originates from the legs. Another thing I wanted to point out that you might find humorous here, Jeremy, this is a photo from the press conference earlier today. You see Tyron Woodley here wearing this goat necklace.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So, what has recent history told us about athletes who wear the goat on their
Yeah,
clothing?
it's not a good sign. It's not a good sign.
This guy has lost his last 4 fights in a row, and he's wearing the goat on his wearing a goat necklace over here.
That's not a good sign. That's not a good sign.
Now, there are two key things that I want to point out here. I want to show a couple of moments from each of their past fights, Jake
Okay.
Paul's last fight and Woodley's previous fight.
Okay.
And I'm going to show just images here so that we're not in any trouble of copyright.
Okay.
So this is Tyron Woodley's previous fight, his last ever fight in the UFC against Vicente Luque, who is a killer, by the way. Right here, Woodley is throwing a left hook. So Luque slips it. And in this moment, at the same time, they are both going to throw a right cross. Luque is throwing a counter right cross, and Woodley's throwing one. And now Luque is going to land first. And as he throws this, I want you to pay attention to what happens to Woodley's left arm here. He completely drops it, and his head is just wide open for the counter. And this shot completely rocked Woodley, as you can see.
Mm-hmm.
Played a lot faster than I thought it would.
Yep.
If that happens, if this happens against Jake Paul, he's going to get hit hard, and then the tides are really going to – I don't know if it's necessarily – see, that's one thing. I don't think there's going to be one big punch, just walk-off KO in this fight. I think one guy's going to land a big shot, and then the tides are going to start going in his favor. Here's a quick breakdown of a moment from Jake Paul's previous fight. He throws a left hook. By the way, comparing the stances here, it really looks to me like – this is Ben Askren, by the way, Jake Paul's previous fight. It really looks here like Jake Paul was fighting to win, and Ben Askren was fighting to not lose. He's got his hands up here saying, oh, don't hurt me, don't hit me. Jake Paul's got his hands here where he's ready to guard himself if he has to, but he's also ready to punch, throw some bombs.
So this is the one that a lot of people accused it of Ben Askren taking a fall, correct?
Yes. And now if
at me being the person that's just watching this from a very casual perspective, I thought that too. So what is your take on that?
I remember the very first time I saw a stand-up stoppage in a boxing match, and I thought, hey, the guy's still standing. What's going on? There's more to it than that. If you look closely, look at the guy's eyes. Look at the way he's standing there. Ben Askren was wobbly. He was he was having a hard time standing still. One more shot, and he would have taken a lot more unnecessary damage. The referee saved him. The ref saved him. He would have got knocked out with the next shot. That's my take on it.
Okay.
So now here in this moment, Jake Paul is going to throw a left hook, and Ben Askren is able to duck under it. And you see what happens is that Jake Paul's glove gets caught up on Ben Askren's arm right here. He doesn't bring his hand back fast enough, and that allows Ben Askren to throw and land a decent counter right hook right here. And let me tell you, man, if it's Woodley that's landing that hook,
it's going to have a lot more impact.
Oh, yeah. So now, to wrap this up, and there are a couple of other unknowns we don't know of as well. Like in terms of cardio, a lot of people think that favors Jake Paul as well. It's going to be 8 3-minute rounds, so which is 24 minutes. But I mean, Woodley, he went 25 minutes several times in the UFC and won some 25-minute fights. So I wouldn't count that as a big check box for Jake Paul either. But now my number one factor is this. Which one of these guys is going to make a major technical mistake first? I just showed you 2 clips from both these guys' previous fight where they made a big mistake and got punished for it. Which one of those guys is going to do that first in this fight? That's what it comes down to for me. And ultimately, I think Tyron Woodley is too big of a step up for Jake Paul right now. I think Woodley has the size that Gibb didn't have. He's got the experience that Nate Robinson didn't have. And he's got the KO power that Askren didn't have. Maybe Jake Paul would be ready for him like in a year from now or so. But as of right now, I think it's just he's biting off more than he can chew. And ultimately, I pick Tyron Woodley to win this fight within the first 4 rounds by knockout.
Nice. Well, I mean, you have more of a expert opinion, I would say, versus me, who's a very casual and is going to view this from a much different perspective. And so I'll lean on you to have the more respectable take here. For me, someone that's just paying attention to it from a distance, I feel like Jake Paul is going to win because I think that he's the money guy. And I think that if he wins this match, it's only going to make the next payday bigger for whoever it is he goes against. And I think it's more of I think it's a work for the most part, and that's kind of a wrestling term, work versus shoot. I think they're working it. But again, that's just a very uneducated, kind of, statement for me. I remember when I made the comments about the last fight, Lyndon, who's part of our Sports Wars team, he's a big MMA boxing fan. He ripped me apart. He was like, that was not Ben Askren taking a fall. Like, that was legitimately Jake Paul winning that fight, and he ripped me apart on his channel, which is fine. That's what we do here at Geeks and Gamers and Sports Wars. Everybody has their take and everybody can challenge anyone. So I did qualify myself that, T-Rev is the far more qualified individual when making these statements.
That is a really good point, though. And when you think into the future, it's hard to think that this would be the end of the Jake Paul circus.
Yeah.
Like, if you were to look ahead, it's like, oh, he's probably going to fight Tommy Fury in the next fight. That's what everybody's saying. Tommy Fury, by the way, the half brother of Tyson Fury, he's on the undercard for this. But ultimately,
I mean, if you look at the money, like if you take Jake Paul out of this fight, Tyron Woodley does not bring the money. He doesn't bring the attention. You know what I mean? Jake Paul is the guy that's bringing the pay-per-view buys, that's generating the income. So, so I look at that and I think, like, I don't take Jake Paul seriously from a perspective of, I think everything he is doing is designed to make money and it's going to make other people money. So that's what I'm looking at. So I go, okay, if he wins this fight, it will legitimize him. Again, I think this is more of a professional wrestling aspect where, if Jake Paul wins, the perception is that, okay, he's climbing the ladder. So the next opponent is going to be set to make a ton of money. You know what I mean? A ton. It would be a huge payday for both parties. So, and again, that's just me. I'm a professional wrestling fan, so I come from that background, and I feel like Conor McGregor brought a lot of that element into the whole Floyd Mayweather situation, where Floyd was just, again, in my opinion, I think it's pretty obvious that Floyd was toying with Conor that entire fight. You know what I mean? Just like he was toying with Logan Paul that entire fight.
Yeah, I think Mayweather carried him.
Absolutely, because if Floyd Mayweather wanted to, he would have knocked Conor out in no time at all. But Conor is a huge professional wrestling fan, and he knows how to sell, and he knows how to sell you or talk you into the building is kind of a wrestling term, and I feel like that's what Jake Paul's doing, and I feel like that there's a lot of people that are looking to benefit from it, and I personally have no problem with that if that's actually what's happening. But I also recognize that maybe I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's going to be interesting how it all plays out. And again, I want to give you a big shout out just for, coming to me and Ryan and kind of just pushing to have this video made and for us to continue to focus in on combat sports. Because with our connections to, people like John Bartolo, that's that opens the MMA world up to us in the UFC world. And we need people like you that actually know that world. I'm interested because I love what Dana White is doing. And Dana White's doing a lot of things with the UFC in terms of how he manages his people, exactly how I manage Geeks and Gamers. Let people be who they want. Let them speak their minds. It's not really you're individuals around here, and that's what the UFC does brilliantly. And Dana White was running the NFL or the NBA, it'd be a much better situation in professional sports right now. Mm-hmm. So, any closing thoughts, man?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said there. Although I don't think that it's like a sideshow or anything like that. I think it's real. I think especially after this altercation today, there's a lot of animosity going in there, but like I said, ultimately, I think what it comes down to, I think Jake Paul and his lack of experience, I think he's going to make the first mistake. Woodley's going to capitalize on that. And also, I think Woodley those shots that knocked out Gibb, Nate Robinson, Ben Askren, they're not going to knock out Woodley. I don't think so. So to me, that's what it comes down to.
Well, I think there's some intrigue for not only this fight, but also our next video talking about it, because obviously, you know, we kind of view it from two different perspectives, and the audience will ultimately see what happens if Jake Paul gets knocked
Yeah.
the hell out. Then
Are
I'm
you gonna watch
wrong.
it?
100. I probably will, just because at this point, if we're going to cover it for the channel, then I'm willing to make the investment in time and everything.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of friends who are already going to be ordering it and kind of pooling their money together anyway. So I've already been invited to go over and watch it. So so I may just, you know, probably go ahead and watch it, check it out, because we're kind of invested on the channel now. So yeah, I'm going to check it out, and me and you'll have a good discussion afterwards for sure.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for checking out this video. If you want to see more combat sports here on Sports Wars, make sure you like this video, comment below, let us know your thoughts. Thank you to T-Rev. Everyone have a great day, and we will talk to you later.